Recording. There we go. Okay, good
I think we
stuff.
need to go back, James, and start moaning about the traffic yesterday, Jody. You missed that part of the recording. That's
Yeah,
that's
let's
typical.
get the whole conversation. Let's moan about driving in London, shall we? Yeah.
Ah, there we go.
Cool.
Cool, cool. Well, thank you for joining the call, Jody. Obviously, we had a brief chat yesterday, and I thought it'd be great to introduce you to James, who's the UK technical resource for Morpheus. So he's the real brains behind the operation over here, Jody. So we've got the right man on the phone now.
Good stuff. Excellent.
Sets me up
Um,
for a fall every time.
Yeah.
Obviously, you potentially may have a Morpheus opportunity over there, which is great, and obviously we want to show you the solution so you can get a better feel for how we work and how we might be positioned within the customer. Do you mind giving James and I just a bit more detail about the customer you have in mind and what they're looking to achieve, Jody?
Yeah, sure, sure. So again, so thank you for taking the time to speak to me as well. The so we've been through a couple of weeks worth of engagement now, talking specifically about their software-defined network solution, and we've gone through quite a few different kind of potential vendors and possibilities, and we're sort of settling on something now. But this is the intention with of Morpheus or a similar product really is to try to pull all of the different technology teams into kind of the same under the same umbrella of an entire solution. So one of the things that they're interested in, so they're currently a VMware house, but there's lots of hardware integration as well, lots of kind of bare metal servers, bare metal infrastructure, and then OpenStack and Docker, and we're talking lots of different technologies that they're interested in, and so they are a managed service provider. They are selling infrastructure as a service. They do it much more. It's much more hands-on than a kind of a typical AWS-like type solution. So they're very very hands-on at the beginning, kind of carry the customer through, try and figure out all the requirements and whatnot, and then at the other end, wanting to kind of offer a similar customer service once it's been delivered, rather than kind of leaving them there to get on with it at that point, offering opportunities to optimize and make the service better for all their customers. One of the ways in which they can do it is speeding things up, making the whole process as painless as possible, really. And so that's where we feel an orchestration system of some description needs to sit, and that's why we're talking today, I think.
Good, good. That's a great overview. I mean, is it the customer? Have the customers seen anything or recommended any good solutions
No.
to you, George, or is it
Uh,
more CC pushing it into those guys?
this is CC working with them to kind of give them ideas. The only conversations we've been having so far are kind of well tried and tested and well known products, vRealize, those kinds of services, only because they're
Yeah.
that's where their experience is. It's kind of with those kinds of products. But the types of things we've been looking at with regards to the software-defined network solution opens us up to really exploring the broader ecosystem of different opportunities, different ideas, different technologies. So that's why we're talking about this one here.
Oh, perfect. Well, in the interest of time, what we typically do, Jody, on this is I literally just share a couple of slides just to basically position Morpheus and why we think we're unique to some of the solutions you've just mentioned then, so why we differ from any of the competitors in the marketplace. And then I hand over to James to actually give you a live demo of Morpheus, so the real exciting part where we can spin up applications and show you what the tool's really capable of.
Okay, great stuff.
So that's what we typically do within the hour. So let me share my screen. James, do you have any initial questions for Jody while I'm sharing my screen?
No, I think that's quite a detailed overview. So, and yeah, we'll get into more conversation, I guess, when we get into the demo. We can talk about a few things and requirements, etc.
Awesome.
See my opening slide, Jody, which should
Yeah, I
say any
can.
app, any database, anywhere.
I can
Perfect,
indeed.
perfect. So let me start by positioning Morpheus and where we originate from, because this really gives us our strength in the marketplace and gives us the grounding to build our product upon. So Morpheus, we're a startup organization, Jody, as many are. However, we're a startup with a slightly different twist in the fact that we're actually privately owned by a company called Bertram Capital. And Bertram are a private equity firm based out in San Mateo, California. And what they do is they invest in low to no tech businesses, so organizations such as beauty companies, construction companies, etc. What Bertram do is obviously they want to make them more efficient, more dynamic, and ultimately more profitable for their shareholders. And the way they do this is that Bertram has their own technology team, and they look to the marketplace for the latest and greatest technologies, and they pull them into these businesses to obviously do the job in-house. And what they noticed was that they had obviously these 20 companies, all with disparate IT teams, different technologies, different infrastructures. And what they really struggled was with managing these infrastructures and the ability to bring in new technologies and new environments much quicker to make them more profitable. So Bertram actually went out to the marketplace to try and find a tool that could manage all this infrastructure and all these teams as one. And what they found was they found tools designed for VMware, tools designed for Amazon, but they couldn't find anything that was truly holistic or gave an overall view of all the different environments and marketplaces as one. So what they decided was that they would develop the tools in-house just to solve their own problems. So they used open source projects and communities to develop a tool to give them a single pane of glass management of all these infrastructures. And what they noticed was that companies and customers actually started approaching them. I mean, guys, you've created something here that the marketplace just hasn't seen before. And this is why we see ourselves as being unique or different, is the aspect that we're built from the ground up to treat Hyper-V the same as VMware, VMware the same as AWS, AWS the same as Azure. So we treat all environments identically. And this is why we think we're slightly unique to anything else in the marketplace. So what's our vision, or what we're trying to achieve as a business, is we're looking to unify IT, but unify teams within a business as well. So if you look at how IT used to be, with IT teams buying and bringing in new technologies, there would be a waiting time before it was deployed, before the developers could become productive and start spinning up machines and delivering what the business needed on a day-to-day basis. So DevOps came along, kind of changed this, started automating processes, etc. But what Morpheus's true vision is the idea of the cloud, which is IT on demand. So Morpheus gives a true self-service platform where developers and people within a business can basically deliver what they need when they need it. So they can spin up the applications, the databases, etc. when they need them. But we also give IT the control over what's being deployed and where that resides within a business. So we have full costing built into our products as well, so IT can really get a handle on what's being spent, where it's being spent, and nail the problem of shadow IT through Morpheus as well. So this is our vision, the single platform, no more waiting.
It's a very good vision as well. I think it fits actually with some of the software-defined network technologies we've been looking at with the customer I'm working with at the moment. But with that in mind, would you consider this as something that's aligned more with an enterprise way of thinking, or is it kind of cross-enterprise service provider? And what's your kind of view on that generally?
Good question. So our customers in the UK, we've only been selling here a short time, but we've managed to get some great logos and business on board already. But you're quite right, Jody. We're an enterprise place. It's the large organisations, but it's also the service providers. So our largest customer in the UK, up until very recently, was a large service provider who we can name was OCSL, and they invested heavily in Morpheus to create their platform and deliver to their customers using Morpheus. So our stronghold is in enterprise and within service providers. So it's a multi-tiered product basically for that kind of region.
Okay.
So just pushing on, what we had to basically discover or basically encounter through our vision to achieve our goal was we had to look at the full application life cycle. So we had to consider everything from provisioning. We had to make the application scalable and fault tolerant. We had to consider backup and recovery, logging, monitoring, and finally decommissioning the application. And as I'm sure you're aware, Jodie, a lot of your customers have already invested in certain aspects of these areas, if not them all. And there's great tools in the marketplace for all of these. So provisioning, Puppet, Chef, Ansible, recovery, backup, etc. There's a lot of tools, a very important aspect to a business, and Commvault, Veeam, Rubrik are the new guys in the marketplace as well. So there's a lot of great technologies that add a lot of value to businesses through these areas. However, they deliver isolated tool sets and isolated knowledge within a business as well. So a lot of people doing the provisioning tend to run scripts in Puppet, Chef. It's a knowledge within a business that if somebody does leave there, there's a knowledge pocket lost with the person leaving the business, which is not only costly in terms of licensing, but it's costly in terms of personnel and resource needed to deliver that to a business.
Yeah, and I suppose kind of looking after them each independently as well, there's some kind of inherent additional supporting costs. Yeah, okay.
Exactly. It becomes very siloed as a business as you have these different departments, typically with different budgets, looking after these areas, and also different personnel within those departments who specialize in these areas. So you get isolated pockets within a business. And what Morpheus really wants to do is deliver all of this through a single product. So all you have to do is manage one product, which is Morpheus, and you can deliver the whole application lifecycle. And that's exactly what we do. So you can do everything from provision to decommission an application through Morpheus. And we actually have our own inbuilt load balancers, we have our own inbuilt backup, we have our own login, and we have our own monitoring. But we also integrate into those third-party products that we mentioned on the previous page, because we realize businesses need that enterprise level in certain areas, and they need the resilience of those enterprise products. So we integrate into them to make the most of the existing investments within a business to deliver a greater ROI through Morpheus as well. So we can deliver the basics through our tool. We also integrate into all the products that customers already have. So we truly are giving that single pane of glass management across their environment. What we then do, once we've obviously got a handle on the environment, is we then allow you to become mobile across hybrid clouds. And what we mean by this is you can literally deploy where you see the business needing the applications to reside, whether that's on-premise, within VMware, OpenStack, Hyper-V, Bare Metal, or we've got all the public clouds integrated as well, so SoftLayer, Azure, Amazon, Rackspace, etc. So what we do is you can obviously deploy these applications. We have full templating built into the products as well to create bespoke applications, but we also encourage customers to create applications in a cloud-centric manner, which then encourages portability of the applications between environments. We have migration built into the product, so you can migrate workloads, but we look towards a new way of thinking with the clouds in terms of application development as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite one of the I suppose the challenges is certainly from some of the engagements I've been involved with in the past is there's actually with these tools comes a need for a slightly different mindset towards how you do technology, how you deliver technology into it as well. Yeah,
absolutely, and that's really important. And one of the things that James will touch upon in the demo is our product is vast and it can touch upon so many areas, but it does change the way a business thinks or approaches how it's been doing IT. So it's really important. And the reason we do this demo is we get either two answers to at the end of the demo. One is we have no idea what you guys have just shown us, at which point we walk away because that business simply isn't ready for this kind of technology. And then the second is, guys, that's unbelievable. We've never seen anything like that. We need that in our business. It just comes down to how a business is running and what they're looking to achieve moving forward. But one of the features that hopefully you'll see in the demo, Jodie, is that with our background being in Bertram Capital, we're actually at a 2.10 release of our product. So we're quite a long way from a 1.0 product release, which means we've got huge flexibility out of the box. So the software can be into your customers and up and running in literally under an hour's time with any application, Java, Tomcat, Ruby, Python. We have all the databases integrated, so Mongo, MySQL, Oracle. We have Windows integrations in there as well. And we, as I mentioned, we're into any infrastructure or any cloud. So all this functionality is out of the box, so you can make an impact into the business straight away. One area which we touch upon is we're compatible with VMs and containers. You mentioned, Jody, your customers interested in containers. It's a hot topic for a lot of organizations at the moment. So
Certainly is.
we have
Yeah.
absolutely we have Docker built into Morpheus to deliver this and deliver it quicker and easier into a business as well, so they can obviously see the benefits of portability, flexibility, and higher overall performance that containers give them. And within the demo, James will actually spin up a container within Morpheus. So it's a nice area to touch upon. Just finishing off, as I mentioned, we're born out of Bertram Capital, and the reason this is really important is Bertram actually managed $1.5 billion in assets. So it gives the likes of Coca-Cola, Nike, AstraZeneca and HSBC now in the UK the confidence to invest in our technology, because they see us as a piece of technology that's going to be around for some time due to the backing we have and the direction of our leadership team as well. And that leads me on nicely to the fact that we've got customers globally now, so throughout the UK, US, and Europe as well. And if you have a spare 10 minutes, Jody, following the demo with James, check out the Spirion case study on our website. They've done a video of how Morpheus has impacted their business, and it's a great story.
Sounds good.
That's it from me. Before we look at the product, do you have any initial questions before I hand over to James?
No, I don't think so. It was that's quite a nice whip through the info. That's good.
Good. Well, let me hand over to James to actually show you the product, Jody. We can go into a lot more detail.
Awesome.
There we go. James should have control, hopefully. If he's still awake and hasn't now gone back to bed.
Just had a little snooze there. Sorry.
Yeah, that's it.
I've been away on email, so I didn't want to interrupt you doing anything.
Getting your Cocoa Pops.
You've heard it all before, James, have you?
So, yeah, I've heard a little snooze in the background while he's doing it. So, just waiting for him to drop those bombs that James will show you this now. So, excellent. All right, Jody, you got the screen?
I do indeed, yeah.
Marvellous, excellent. Sorry, Jody, you might have said, and yeah, I apologise. What's your role in Computer Centre? Are you a technical person? Are you?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I'm a technical architect in the networking and security practice. So essentially my focus is SDN, NFV, that kind of side of the business, and as that market as the industry really is shifting and changing, there's a lot more responsibility on us to help and get the solution right for all these opportunities, all the kind of the edge, pretty much. So everything that we're talking about here falls almost within our remit to at least be able to tie it all together in a nice neat bow.
Right. Okay. Cool. Good. All right, so yeah, just and it's also important to know, if I'm talking to a sales guy, I change the pitch slightly, but no, with technical, we can go into a little bit more detail, which is great. What we do, we've done a few of these now. There's no point in trying to do a feature function demo of Morpheus. It doesn't work. They're not being funny. There are too many features, so you just end up pointing and clicking and going, "Oh, we do this, we do this, we do this." So what we've found is what we're going to do is actually do some deployment. Jonathan mentioned we're going to actually do some deployments. And in fact, we're going to pretend we're a day in the life of a DevOps guy or a production guy who needs to deploy an application which runs on top of an application stack, which is then using infrastructure that is a cloud of some description. And that sort of shows off a lot of the features, but it still is just scratching the surface. But it's a good, because it's the sort of thing we believe users using our product are looking to do.
Yeah, sure.
Obviously, a service provider is probably more interested in the capability of self-provisioning, maybe just VMs, whereas the customers may not be too worried about application stacks. But again, it shows off the whole bit. But before I do that, just a quick sort of orientation. This is our dashboard. This is where a user would log on to. With regards service provider, we are out of the box multi-tenanted.
Okay.
So As Jonathan mentioned, we have service providers already using the product, and they've been actually quite instrumental in the architecture of the multi-tenancy. But the product was designed from the ground up to be multi-tenanted, and I'll show you just slightly different sort of demo. We have these, in fact, this has been tidied up over the last couple of days. I had a moan about our demo lab. It was a bit boring. He's come up with tenant A, B, and C. He was going to call them after beers or something, but he's obviously bottled out. It's literally bottled out.
No pun intended.
But yeah, pun intended. Yeah. So the idea here is that we refer to them as accounts, which is slightly annoying. Me and a colleague at Big Tech moan about this all the time. We refer to a tenant as an account, which of course has a different terminology in Windows. But you would create a tenant, and then you'll see as we go through, at various points, you can make things available to either all of the public users of the system, which would mean all of the tenant accounts, or you can make it specifically available to a tenant. So everything is sort of designed to handle that type of thing. The other thing you can do at that tenant level is you can change look and feel. So we have full white labeling. So again, our service providers like that, and silly things like I can click on this tenant. Here we have users. Now you can create users. Absolutely, you can go in and create users, or we can hook into identity sources. Okay. Things like LDAP, AD, things like that. So we can go in, add an identity source, and we have a range of them available that can be used. So that's nice again, because tenants tend to typically have, service providers typically have some sort of access control. But also for our enterprise customers, it gives you that capability to very quickly get people stood up. And what you do is you then tie user roles within the AD system or whatever identification system you're using to roles within Morpheus. So we have full role-based access control for users. And then one of the things you can do, for example, is as an admin guy at the very top level, I can go in and impersonate. There, for example, he's changed the colors, and we have, like I say, a full white labeling. He's just changed the color band there for some reason, but it's very easy to change all of that type of thing. We quite often do it for demos for customers.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So that's all sort of built in there. It's available. So that's the first thing. So then, what are we looking at here? Well, Morpheus is designed to do a number of things, and in fact, I'm just reading some articles. We're building up our materials and documentation library, and one of our guys has written some quite nice stuff around what we are, and he says that we're not really what's referred to as a cloud management platform. He feels we're more, so a CMP. He feels we're more sort of what he calls a CAMP, a cloud application management platform, and that's quite a nice description. So we're trying to get people to think less about I need a VM and more I need to deploy a website for this marketing campaign or for this usage. And that's what Morpheus is designed to do. So we have the ability to provision. We'll look at that so we can see our provisioning, what we're doing, how it's working, all of that sort of stuff. So we'll look at provisioning. That'll be an area we spend quite a bit of time. Once we've provisioned, we have monitoring built into the product. It's quite a detailed, quite in-depth monitoring tool. It's not saying are you using 10% of CPU or 50% of CPU. It's saying is the website there? Is it responding in less than 5 milliseconds? Is the database that makes up the second component in that stack available? Is it responding to the queries in the right way? So it is a sort of an application stack monitoring tool, which is quite neat.
That's actually an inbuilt tool. That's not, you're not aggregating stuff from external. Okay.
No, it's built in. Yeah,
very good.
So all the bits I'm going to show you are built in. What we have is then the capability to integrate out into other things. So, for example, monitoring, we have a number of customers already who have ServiceNow as a ticketing system, for example. So if we have an incident, if we see an incident, we can raise a ticket into ServiceNow. So we can send an email, or we can actually just natively directly create a ticket in ServiceNow. So that's all there. And again, the idea behind Morpheus is you get all of this. This is, I'm sure you've dealt with a lot of enterprise products in your time, and I know I've sold a number in my time where there are various license levels, and I'll demo you the enterprise super duper license with all the features.
Yeah.
And we're one license, so everything I'm talking about is in the product, whether you want it or not. That's the other thing that people argue as well. I don't want that. Well, it's some bad luck, mate. You've got it. So you get monitoring. We're not there to supersede, other monitoring tools out there. There are some great monitoring tools out there, but very much a supplemental. And again, if you think about the space that we're working in, this world of DevOps, often it's a lot of the people that are spinning up machines in Morpheus are developers, quite transient, but it's useful to have monitoring. They can see what's going on, and that ties into logging. Again, a lot of people, I'm sure of enterprise class logging. Splunk has really made a big impact over the last couple of years. So it came out of nowhere. Suddenly logging's the thing you need to do. So we have logging built in. So as we deploy, we aggregate logs from everything that we deploy and bring it into Morpheus. We are on. So something else I'll mention about the product at this point in time is we are an on-prem product. So you buy Morpheus, install it on-prem.
Yep.
And which could be, of course, in the cloud, but we're run on a Linux box, and then we are architected out of things like Nginx, Elasticsearch, RabbitMQ, Tomcat, MySQL. Okay, so for our logging, we use Elasticsearch or the Elk stack, and
yep.
we can either use our own. You can scale that out. Our product is highly scalable for resilience and just for performance. If you want to build it out across 20 machines, you can do. Typically run on one box. But also we can integrate into things like Splunk. So we can push our logs into Splunk. So if you want to carry on using Splunk, that's great. But again, the thing to think about is if we're spinning up and shutting down a lot of machines, which is one of the changes that Morpheus can introduce into an organization, do you really want to pay logging licenses for Splunk? And we were talking to a customer in the US who estimated they could save something in the region of $50,000 a month on Splunk licenses just by not logging the development environment. So, but of course logs are incredibly important to development. And then the other bit we have in here is backup. Now, I say this to everybody, my background is backup for the last few years before, well, a little while before. I used to be at EMC, and then I was at Veeam. So I've sold enterprise class backup. So I'd never ever try and sell Morpheus as a backup product. But again, what we can do is across all of the platforms that we connect to, we can do a standardized backup of anything that's running. And all it is a hypervisor snapshot and then a copy of that image into a Morpheus repository wherever you've configured that. You wouldn't use that for your enterprise class SharePoint environment, but you might use it, you probably would use it for all those dev machines again.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's there, it's built in, it gives you that standard. So whether you're running on VMware, whether you're running on Hyper-V, whether you're running on an Amazon, it's the same process. We give you that same back-end system and result. Okay, and the final thing here I just show off on this screen is our recent activity. So we have an audit log. So again, tying into role-based access control, we have an audit log of who's doing what. So we can see all of that type of thing. Okay, what we'll look at now is we'll drop into infrastructure because that's sort of an important part of Morpheus. Is what can we connect to? It's sort of an area that when people are talking about cloud, it's sort of the bit they're excited about.
Yep.
What clouds can we talk to? So as well as the tenants that we have and then the users and roles and so on and so forth, we also have a concept called groups, and groups exist at a tenant level. So you go into a tenant and you would create groups. Right. And then within those groups you would put clouds, and then you can attach users to those groups. So it's a way of giving users access to clouds. So you can see here, for example, at this top level, I have a whole range of groups. You wouldn't normally have it set up like this. You might have one or two groups that an end user can see. But for example, San Mateo VMware, there's one cloud, and I know that that is a VMware infrastructure. So if I was a member of that group, that is all I could deploy into.
Right. Okay? So if you kind of did a traditional sort of a part of your business, a business unit or something is a group, then you might give them access to different clouds based on their functionality, their requirements, exactly. For example. Yeah, okay.
Exactly. So yeah, a good example of that is you've got the developers developing the apps, and you've got the operators who run the apps in production. So there what you want is you want the dev guys to be able to see just their dev bit. You don't want them mussing about in live. You don't want them being tempted to deploy into live or anything like that. So they would see a connection into the, say, VMware infrastructure into the dev cluster, and that's all they can use. But the guys that run live, maybe you want them to see dev, because maybe what their job is to pick up machines that have been developed in dev and move them over into live. And so they want to see both. So they might have a group that's got both, or they have to have two groups, one for live, one for dev, depending on the way you want to play it. And there's some benefits to either way. Of course, the other thing you do with an enterprise is you could have, if you're using Morpheus with an enterprise, is you would have actually, a tenant. You'd have you might have project teams set up as tenants, and again, you can control what they can access. Of course, the other thing you can do is have multiple clouds, and so we're going to use the group called Demo. You'll see this mentioned several times in a minute, but we're going to go and have a look at that. What does that look like? If we go into the group Demo, this is the range of clouds that, if I'm a member of this group, I can deploy into. Okay. So I can deploy into any of those clouds, but more importantly, this is the bit most people are interested in, this is what we currently support. So on the public side, we can deploy into Azure, into Amazon, normal two that people ask for, but also, DigitalOcean, Google, SoftLayer.
Yeah, all the big ones.
All the big ones. On the private side, again, we have the usual suspects. VMware, of course, is the majority. Hyper-V, we've got a few out there. OpenStack, becoming more popular, and then some more sort of esoteric ones. We're looking at Azure Stack. We already have an integration into Azure Stack, even though it's nowhere near yet. But we can deploy into there if you've got that. So yeah, there's a range.
Is there a roadmap for new, or do you take in customer requests? How does that piece?
Yeah, so it's a case of customer requests, to be honest. Again, Jonathan mentioned we're designed to be cloud agnostic. So if you've been looking in this space, what you tend to find is there are a lot of products out there that are, I guess you could call them, using terminology, a proper cloud management, or are a cloud management platform. But what they've done actually is they're a front end to another cloud. So you really, you mentioned VMware's vRealize, or there are tools out there that are Amazon orientated, and they do a great job of integrating into those clouds and allowing you to deploy into those clouds. But they then really struggle to do anything else, and that's part of their problem right now. They're trying to reinvent themselves to do multi-cloud. We've never done that. We've never tried to do any particular cloud in depth. We do all the same clouds. So we've got an engine that does the deployment, that then hooks into the APIs that the cloud. So as long as a cloud has got an API that we can access, and it's got the ability to programmatically deploy into it, we would be able to write an integration into it.
Okay, you're essentially you're built ground up to be agnostic, pretty much.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely. Just to show you, now the other thing I mentioned at this time as well, the other thing I like to clarify, because this can be a bit of a contentious issue, but is that we're not designed to be a cloud configuration tool. So when we connect to VMware, we're not replacing vCenter, okay, in the sense of, if you want more data stores, if you want to change your network, if you want to do software-defined networking, you do that with the tools that manage that infrastructure. What we do is those resources then get surfaced up into Morpheus, and we allow you to consume those in a very controlled way. But if you want to go into Azure and set up, availability, recovery groups, whatever I can't remember the name. I'll see it in a minute. I'll click on it now. Click on, let's add Azure link. Can't remember what it's called. A resource group. Mm-hmm. So if I want to go and create a resource group in Amazon, in Azure, you log into Azure and you create your resource group, and you pull all your resources in, you create your networking within there, then Morpheus allows you to use that. Okay. Again, I believe it's a great advantage, because otherwise you can imagine if we tried to be a very deep configuration to Azure and to Amazon and to VMware, our product's going to get massively clunky and huge and big and messy.
Yeah, and impossible
Yeah, exactly. And our product is very lightweight. And another thing I'll just talk to you about is we're control plane only. So the other, positive and negative from a software vendor's point of view, but we're not really that. We're not sticky in we don't change the configuration. We're not you can take Morpheus away and everything will carry on running and you could continue to use it. So there are some products out there that actually get really embedded into the environment and make quite a lot of changes that if that then goes away, cause you real problems.
Yeah.
We're not like that. Okay.
Understood. Yeah.
So let's have a look at creating connection to a cloud. We're in Azure. The top section is very simple. It's the Morpheus bit. So that's where you'd say, Azure Dev or Azure Production or whatever you wanted to call it. Here you can see, is it available to all of the tenants or is it going to be available to a specific tenant? So we can create a connection. And the usual one here is we might create one connection for, say, VMware at the top level that we make publicly available. And then what you can do is you can push down, we have a way of configuring then things like networking, data stores, resource groups at a tenant level. Or you could create multiple connections at this level and point it off in different directions and give it to different groups. But as you can see, then what you need to do is you put in subscription ID, tenant ID, client, so the normal connection stuff from Azure. We will then populate this box with resource groups and you would select your resource group. And from then on, as somebody deploys using this connection, it will go into that resource group. Okay. Another thing we can do is we can go and inventory existing instances as well. So again, it's sort of a nod to the fact that there are people out there already using these infrastructures, and so we can go and pull in and give you an audit, if you like, of what's already out there in these sorts of environments. At that point, it's not under Morpheus management. All we're doing is showing you what's out there, and that's an important distinction, which we'll talk about later.
Okay.
The other one we can look at, VMware is the usual one. So again, that top section, the name, but then we just put in vCenter, usual stuff for connecting to a VMware environment. You put in your vCenter, and then we'll put in VDCs and clusters. So you would define by VDC and cluster what this connection is going to connect to. So again, a service provider might have different clusters for different customers, and so they would have a different connection for each customer at this point. Okay. All right, so connection to cloud's very simple, very straightforward. I think, did you mention OpenStack?
Yep.
I don't know much about OpenStack, but we connect into OpenStack and do all the various stuff as well. In fact, that's one of the great things. We've got a large customer at the moment, and they're looking at ways of moving away from their reliance on VMware, and so then they're going to be using Morpheus going forward as their deployment tool. Sorry. But it doesn't matter what the underlying hardware is or the underlying infrastructure is. Morpheus sort of buffers you from that.
Yeah, so it's quite an interesting comment. You say you don't know much about OpenStack, but with regards to this tool, that's actually that's the benefit of Morpheus, presumably, where once you've kind of got these integrations, you don't even really need to worry about what's under the hood, as it were. You then have a single layer for provisioning on, and it's always the same across all of the clouds.
Exactly. So if I'm the Morpheus administrator, I don't need to know anything about OpenStack. I just go to my OpenStack guy and go, right, this is what I need. I need these connection credentials, and just configure it up how you want me to be deploying into it. So yeah, it's that great thing, and we're talking to partners about, because you mentioned about cloud and stuff. We're talking to partners about how they help customers work with the cloud, whether it's going to be a migration to the public cloud or whether it's going to be using the public cloud as part of their infrastructure. I think is more likely. Again, Morpheus gives you the ability to give you a standard at the end user level. A standard experience. At the back end, there is going to need to be expert in those various clouds, but does that need to now be inside a company organization, or could be a partner delivering that expertise? So there's sort of some quite nice things. A couple of other things I just point out at this level. The other thing we can do, which I quite like, is policies. So this is the ability to, as people, you'll see in a minute, I'm going to do some self-provisioning. So as I do that self-provisioning, it's just putting some control around that. So you'll see these in action. So for group demo, there is a policy of naming an instance. It's user configurable, and it's going to use a pattern. Now that means that I could overwrite it because it's user configurable, so it's suggested. And then down here we've got two. We should remove it. I think the idea is we show you sort of the level of superseding. But so there's a user configurable expiration of 1 day, but then there's a fixed expiration of 1 day, so that takes precedence. But what that means is when I deploy an instance into this group, it will be deleted tomorrow. by default.
Right. Okay.
Unless I request an extension to the lease. And we have a range of policies that you can set. So expiration, and you can set it, is it user configurable fixed or not at all. You don't have to put one on there, in which case there won't be any expiry at all. So if this was live, for example, this group was the live production environment, you wouldn't have an expiry on there typically. And then you can have things around approval for extension. I can request an approval. Does it get automatically approved for 7 days regardless, or does it go through an approval process? Okay.
So does this kind of thing, life cycle specifically, does that kind of help billing? Is that the intention here? So where you might spin up dev machines in Amazon, you don't want them sat there and never torn down, kind of thing. This would just automatically do it for you.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. So the idea is, it's trying to keep. I mean, I do it. I've only got a little home lab, but I'll log into it. I'll log into it today, and I'll look at it, and I'll have spun up half a dozen machines last week that I've forgotten about.
Yeah.
That are just sitting there doing nothing. So, and in our demo lab, it's great because they'll get torn down tomorrow. If I forget to go, I delete this after this demo, they'll get torn down tomorrow anyway. So when I come to do my demo again next week, it's clean. But yeah, absolutely, those cost typing things, that's what people are trying to get control of. They are worried about I can spin up Amazon instances and they can just keep growing because I'll forget what they are. It's like anything in life, isn't it? You forget what you actually used it for, therefore you're fearful of deleting it, so you leave it, and you'll get around to tidying it up eventually.
Yeah.
So we have some other options as well. So expiration, will delete it. Shutdown, we'll just power it down. So it could be that it gets powered down after a day, in which case it's still there, it's just not using CPU. So not costing you. And also you can set maximums. Now there are several places where you can set amounts of resource that people can use. So you can set it at a project team level, you could set it at an account level, you can set it at a cloud level. Here what we're saying at an individual instance level, you could say, right, the maximum memory that you can set on an individual instance is 8 gig. Which will stop a developer going in and provisioning, because he knows his database will run much faster if he gives it 128 gigs. It's not his code that's the problem, it's the amount of memory the box has got. So the more memory he gives it, it's always going to run faster, of course. You can lock him down and say, no, you can't. And you see there's other options around this as well. But I like that policy engine. I think that's quite a useful thing, and drives that. The other thing, Jonathan mentioned containers and Docker. We are intrinsically container oriented. Actually, under the covers, our product actually talks about containers regardless of what you're doing. But also what we have the ability to do is deploy Docker hosts into clouds as well. So you can go, right, I want to start deploying Docker instances, and you can start spinning up the Docker host from within Morpheus. So it's all there and very easy to do.
Excellent.
Okay, so we've got our cloud, we're connected, so let's go into provisioning and let's do some self-provisioning. Now what we're going to do is we're going to build an application stack, which is going to consist of a Tomcat server and a database server, and we're then going to deploy an application on there which has been written for me. We've got a deployment, a WAR file that's been pre-written for me. So that's what I want to do. That's what I've been tasked with to do today.
Before we just very quickly, is there any chance we could go on the infrastructure, just have a look at the networking section briefly?
Damn, nearly got away with it. Okay. Networking. Let's have a go at networking. So concept here is what we will do is, as you connect us to clouds, we will pull in any networking type constructs that are there. So for example, there's Amazon, the Amazon cloud that we're connected to. Now, some of these we can't actually do a lot to. So for example, again, as I mentioned earlier, if you want to actually do network configuration for Amazon, you would log into Amazon. Yep. And you would do your configuration there. Can the VMs running on there get out to the public internet? Can you access them? So all the firewall rules, all of that sort of thing is set up in Amazon. However, what this allows you to do is do things like, well, who can access this particular? So again, as I mentioned earlier, you might have multiple users using the same Amazon account, and this would allow you to, give this particular network to a particular user, or a group of users for deployments. So you might have a test network and a live network within Amazon or something like that. So you can do those sorts of things. When we get down to things like VMware and private infrastructures, and VMware is the one we've got the deepest integration, again, because it's the one we're asked about the most, but we can do a number of other things. So for a start, we have an IPAM server built in.
Okay.
So it's our own one, and what that allows us to do, as you know, is set up a set of IP addresses, and then assign those to a network. So here, if I go in, you'll see that now I can set on this VMware network, I can set my gateway, my DNSs, and then what I can do is I could then attach a network pool to here. So as I deploy VMs onto here, they're given fixed IP addresses from that IP pool.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Understood.
So again, so that works really well. We've got a number of customers who don't want to use DHCP, want to have fixed IPs, but don't want to have to give lists of IP addresses to developers, for example. So that works really well. Also, you know, we integrate into things. So we don't integrate, but we've got, you know, Big Tech, who are a distributor in the UK, for example, resell vArmor as a part of their network security suite, and it creates lots of VLANs. And again, what you can then do is you can surface the VLAN to specific user groups, make, you know, so they can only deploy into a very specific network, and that can all be done within here.
Yeah. Okay. So you're heading down. Yeah. So a lot of the solutions I'm seeing from an SDN kind of point of view have, you know, everybody's talking. You know, the TLA of choice today is an API. Everybody kind of is presenting APIs and some sort of control or another. And we're thinking about networks as a pool of resource, much the same as a cloud would offer you infrastructure, in it just as a pool of resource. So is there any, or is there anything on a roadmap with regards to that kind of level of integration? So when I'm spinning up a server, it would also, you know, create a VLAN and an end-to-end network provisioning, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, we are, so networking is an area of big interest to us as well, because it is a hot topic. So we are looking at, so we would say, well, again, it depends on your wording, marketing versus technical people versus sales guys. You know, we would say we've got a degree of SDN in the product, using another TLA for you. But and we have some of that in there today, and we are looking at ways of taking that further. So NSX, for example, we're looking at some NSX integration. Our view actually is that, again, you would use NSX to do a lot of your, you'd use the native NSX tools to do your configuration, and it then gets surfaced into Morpheus, and we can then use it. We are looking at how we can take that further. So we've spoken to a couple of the vendors in this space. You know, for example, you know, a lot of them now, their appliances are now software. You know,
exactly.
So again, I know Big Tech, for example, have gone and actually packaged up a lot of the products that they sell as software appliances, which are then deployed from within Morpheus. So they can go in and deploy to use a name I know they were looking at, and there's no other reason than to say this than it's a name, for example, but Palo Alto Networks. Okay, they could deploy a Palo Alto Networks appliance into a cloud using Morpheus. Okay, but that does the Palo Alto bit. The next bit would be, which would be interesting, is could we then, as we deploy a VM, push some sort of configuration into that, as you say. Now we can do that today with load balancers. So load balancing is an area that we do this. So we have integration into a range of load balancers already. So as you deploy, you can say, yes, I've got a load balancer, and I want this to sit behind it, and we'll then update the load balancer with the configuration of the box that we're deploying. And we can also do that for Amazon and Azure as well, as you can see there. So both you know, on-prem and cloud-based load balancers. So yeah, networking down the line, there may be some clever things we can do. There's probably, and I'll take this the right way, there's probably a lot of clever things we can already do that I have no idea about, because our guys, there's an awful lot of stuff in our product that we've worked on that they haven't surfaced yet. They're just making sure it works properly before they surface it.
No, okay. So exactly what you have there. So you see, I noticed F5 and AVI and a few other bits, yeah, and Citrix and whatnot. So all the big names. That's broadly. This is broadly where we're headed, or where my question was heading. So yeah, that's good. Good stuff. Okay, thank you.
Good. Excellent. All right, so let's get into provisioning. So what we're going to do now is we're going to build, as I mentioned, an application stack. Now, I'm going to do this a slightly different way. We could do this as a one-click option. Okay, so we have the concept of building application stacks. So we have an application template builder. You can go in, you can put in all your components that you want to do that make up an app. You can configure them as far as you like. In a minute, you'll see as I deploy, I have a range of questions to answer, and I could actually put those answers into the template and make it almost a one-click go. Or you could leave it, just completely blank, and then as you deploy, it says, right, what are your parameters for your Tomcat server? What are your parameters for your MySQL server, for example? Okay, and tying into that templating, we've got automation, virtual images library are all part of that piece where, library allows you to build your templates, and if they're complex ones, an example would be MongoDB. MongoDB, you can run it as a standalone box, you can run it as a cluster or a sharded cluster, depending on what option you want. When that deploys, it might need 3 boxes that are then programmatically linked at a cluster level, and you can set all of that type of thing up. Okay, and then you can pass parameters between components and things. What we're going to do is we're going to actually build a couple of components of an application manually, so you see the process of self-provisioning, but then we're going to link them together as an app. Okay. So we're going to start with an instance, and this is our instance engine. This is where we've got all our instances that are running, and I'm going to add an instance. Okay, another bit of explanation. This is a Morpheus supplied list. So what we do is that you've got the Morpheus server on-prem, you install it. What it will do is go away and talk to a Morpheus resource, which is on an S3 server somewhere, and it then provides this list. So we maintain this list of all of these things, and these are applications, things like Cassandra, Confluence, etc., Chef, and they are OSs, CentOS, Ubuntu, Windows. Windows we have in there, we wouldn't recommend users use it. It's there for demo, really. And these are all images that we build and maintain, and we try and keep a version of these for every cloud that we support. You imagine that's a massive task, but we're doing a pretty good job of it. Okay, so if I wanted to deploy a CentOS image into VMware, I'd simply click on that, go through the steps and deploy it into my VMware cloud. If I wanted to do it onto Amazon, I'd select that CentOS, say click it, select my Amazon cloud and deploy it in there. So we maintain all of that for you. The idea is that a customer can use these, they're there, they're available, they can start using them now, or using our templating library, they can build their own images. They might have a particular version of CentOS that they like, particular hardening, and various other things that they want to pre-build into a template, so they can do all of that type of thing.
Okay.
The other thing that we have here that I just like to point out is we also have, bizarrely, we do actually have some clouds in here as well. So we've got Amazon, Azure. I think if I click, if I select, so we've got Amazon, Azure, Google, Hyper-V. So we've got all the clouds. Now the idea here is that if I've already got a template in one of those clouds, I can use it. And the easiest one to explain that with is Azure. I just don't worry about this for the moment. We'll come back through here in a moment. I just want to get to the next panel. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to deploy onto Azure, but I'm actually deploying from the Azure Marketplace. Okay, so if I'm already using Azure and I'm familiar with it, there's the Azure Marketplace where I might already have images that I like to use. I can still use them, but from within Morpheus. So this is just going to do that deployment from there. And I can pull a plan down. We pull all the plans in. If I pick a plan here, I know there's this one, for example, basic, and we get the pricing for it. Okay, so it's good to go, and we're ready to use it, and we can hit it and start deploying it. But the more likely one is you want to actually you say, right, this is an application I want to deploy. So I'm going to start with a MySQL image. So I'm going to deploy a MySQL server. Now, The other thing that you've got over here is we support this as both a VM across a range of platforms. So what we will do there is we'll deploy an Ubuntu or a CentOS box and then put MySQL on top of it, so it's running as a VM. So perfectly fine if you've got a VMware environment today, or you're going into Amazon or Azure or into Hyper-V, you can deploy that straight away. The other thing that we support is we also have containers. So we've got that built as a container. So if you've got a Docker host running, you can deploy it on there. And of course that then is supported on any infrastructure. All you need is a Docker host, which is a great way to do it. The other thing, the grey box in the middle, is we also do talk about unmanaged, and we do have within the product, I'll talk about the scale of the product and the number of features, we also have the ability to support, today it's UCS only, but we have the ability to support bare metal. This is the ability we can actually take from, we can power on a UCS blade, pixie boot it, put a hypervisor on it, and then start deploying onto it. So we have a capability there of that, and we're looking at scaling that out as well, putting other infrastructures into that. So we've got a customer in the US that uses it to just basically build out their infrastructure as they need it. But what we're going to do is we're going to use the containers. So when I select this, what I do now is by picking the cloud, I then define what type of image I'm going to deploy. So I'm going to pick, remember, demo is the one we want to use. And before I go, I'm going to use Morpheus Cloud, but Morpheus Cloud is just a Docker host farm. So all I'll get is the option to go Docker. If I pick VMware and just go next, what you'll see is I now get the option to go with Docker or VM. So I can actually deploy this as a VM. So if I go VM master, and now I get VMware specific things like how much memory do you want to use, what data store. Again, I can lock the data store down. Again, as administrator, I can see them all, but I could lock this down so that people can only deploy onto DS130 root, for example. I can, memory, I can pick the network, which network do I want to use. Do you remember it was set to DHCP? I don't know if you noticed that it was set to DHCP, and so on and so forth. So we've got all the networking, all the VMware specific stuff there. I'm not going to use that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do it onto Morpheus Cloud. You see here, it's using my name, my initials, my cloud code, and type. That's been set for me, and I can set it as a test machine. Next. Now I get, because it's a Docker only host, I only get the option to pick Docker, and I've got some versions there. I've got different versions. We've got different versions in our library. I know 5.6 works for me. I'm going to use the Docker single master, but I could deploy a cluster here. I could deploy a master, and we'll spin up 2 instances and link those together. I then pick my plan. Again, tying that, trying to keep the concept of cloud standard across everything. We can have plans within your private infrastructure as well. If you've got a public cloud, we pull the plan in from there. If it's a private cloud, you put in your own plan. You can change all of this around in the back end, and these can either be locked down to these numbers, or they could be configurable. So if I pick this first one, the administrator's left it to be open so I could show it. I could say, actually, I want 10 gigs of storage and I want 256 megabytes of RAM. Okay. Or he could lock it down so the only options are all locked. So I can go, it's only 1 gig, 10 gig, that's all I can pick. Okay, and then I can have pricing behind that. We do have a pricing engine, price book, and you can update all of that and have it so you can show people how much this is going to cost you. Things you need to do, you need to be able to put in user IDs and passwords so you can interact with the session. So I can do all of that from here as well. Hit next. And now we get into the automation piece. Customers are already doing a lot of stuff around SaltStack, Puppet, Chef, Ansible, either standardization of infrastructure, deploying builds, deploying, antivirus, making sure service packs are applied, all of those sorts of things. So we have a workflow engine that integrates into all of those. So you can pull in your Ansible libraries and your runbooks and all of those sorts of things, and then run them at deployment time. So that's all available, and that's a very popular area with our customers that are looking at DevOps. Backup, do we want to back up? Yes, no, very simple. if I'm doing this on a private infrastructure, VMware or Hyper-V, we can integrate with Veeam and Commvault. Today we're looking at other options as well, and it would then give me an option, do I want to do a Veeam backup? And what it will do is when I deploy the VM, it will then create a Veeam job that backs that VM up. So you can integrate into those tools. And here you see the life cycle. So you can see there it's locked down. This box will get deleted in 24 hours unless I do something proactive to change it.
Okay.
Hit next, hit complete, and that's it. The box is getting deployed. Okay, so down here somewhere, we're provisioning that box. And if we click on it, what we'll get is we'll get a status bar, which is unlike Microsoft, we believe fairly accurate. What we do is the first few times you use it, it's wildly inaccurate. It will really be guessing at what it's doing. But as you deploy into an infrastructure, different images, we learn, we look at our own log files, and we work out how long things take. And actually, it gets pretty close. This last 1 second usually takes a little while. There you go. So it wasn't far off from a time point of view. So that image is now up and running and available. Because it's a container, it's nice and quick. VM typically takes 3 to 4 minutes, depending on your infrastructure.
Yeah.
Now, before we go too deep into that, what I'm just doing very quickly is go through exactly the same process, but for a Tomcat server.
Okay.
So I'm going to hit next. So just bear with me a moment. So I'm going to do all exactly the same thing. Yeah. Tomcat, Docker. Yeah, I'm going to go with 1 gig, 10 gig. Hit next. Now, Tomcat, rather than being clusterable, is scale out. So here you can see here's our load balancer integration. So I can hit yes, I want to use a load balancer. In our internal lab, we've got our Morpheus load balancer, which is based on HA proxy. So we actually ship a load balancer with ours. So I can select that, hit next, and that's it. That's deployed as well. So yeah, how long does that take to deploy an image? A few seconds.
Yeah, fairly swift.
Okay, so they're now there. The database is running. If I click on that, the box will be available. Now what I'm going to do is, because I'm going to start deploying an app, what I just need to do is actually connect to that and put some data into it. So I'm just going to get a little SQL app here. So I'm just going to do a connection, and it should all be the same. I usually go to the same Docker host. Oh, it's even the same port number. That's useful. So hit connect.
Whilst you're doing this, is there a way of kind of, or is the capability there to use some of those additional provisions? So you talked about Puppet Chef and Ansible and whatnot. Is it in terms of a provisioning workflow? Could you drive an Ansible playbook, for example, and then you have that do some additional? So more in that kind of orchestration workflow, if you like.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely, that's exactly the reasoning behind it. You know, people are already using, as you say, Ansible playbooks to do a bunch of automation, but it's programmatical from beginning to end. Whereas here, you can give somebody access to a self-provisioning tool that is click and play, but then pull in the Ansible playbook they want to use.
Yeah.
So an example is bank. We're doing some work with a bank. They want to do this. There seems to be this move towards people experimenting with data, and what they want to do is going to make public, to their customers, their financial institution customers, the ability to experiment on their data. The way they're going to do it is they're going to export a load of data from their production systems. They're going to sanitize it, of course. Then they're going to make that a data set. Customer will then log into Morpheus. They'll say, right, I want a box of this type of data. That'll get provisioned, and they're using Ansible to then import that data into the database engine at deployment time. So yeah, all of that type of thing is very, very capable. So that bit there, I just did an import of data into that SQL engine. I noticed one of my colleagues has written a script to do that. So in his demo, he probably runs a playbook as he's talking it through and goes, right, that's going to populate the data. I like to do it the slightly longer way because I'm showing you that the database is there and running and I can interact with it. So it's sort of, you have a range of things that you can do, which is quite neat. And like I say, we're integrating into those tools that people are already using. So we're not, because you'll get the guys that have spent the last year, 2 years learning Chef, Puppet, Ansible, and they're pretty protective. Like anybody in IT, they become quite protective of their bit of infrastructure that they're the gods of. It's like, well, you can carry on using that, but it's just going to be used in a slightly different way. You don't have to be a developer to be able to do it. So as you know, that you remember Jonathan's presentation, you had the DevOps bit in the middle. We're sort of blurring that. We're sort of smoothing those rough edges off of DevOps, where you have to be a coder to do anything. I mean, I can't code, but you know, now I can go in. For example, I could change the environment variables on that Docker container. I have no idea how to do that other than through here.
Yeah.
In fact, we're going to do that in a moment. But you see here, the thing I'm looking at is I'm seeing that this thing is available. It's giving me a status check, health. It's giving me availability, average response time. I'm getting performance data coming through. We install an agent, so that's an important thing to recognize. We actually put a little agent as we deploy into everything that we deploy. So we grab this data directly from everything that we're deploying. So we're not reliant on the hypervisor tools to give us their view on the world. We are saying this is what the machine is doing from our point of view.
That's part of your solution, yeah. Okay.
Again, so we're starting to pull here's the log files. We've got all the log files coming through. We've got the environment variable, and we can even connect to it on the console. So we have a built-in console as well. So anything that we deploy.
Awesome. So I'm really sorry, guys. I may have to end up cutting this short in a second. I'm about to get collared to go elsewhere, but it's been really good. Is there a way we can kind of, because you were just about to conclude, weren't you, on the kind of app delivery?
Let's see how long before you get dragged off the phone. Let's very quickly build the app. So the final step, I just want to show you building an application stack. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use our app builder just to pull those two apps together. So what I do is I go app spud, just give it a name, put it in that same group just so I know where it is. And then what I do in here is I add tiers. So I go as an app tier and as a database tier.
Yeah.
I add an instance. I'm going to use an existing one because I've already created it. There it is. I do the database tier as well, existing one, MySQL. There it is. And I hook those together. Okay, so I drag that, drop it to there, and that's it. I've now built a two-tier app. Okay, two-tier app stack. So when I go in there now, what we've got are the two apps running, the two components running. When I look at the environment variables, it's the environment variable for the application stack. When I look at the log files, it's the log files for the application stack. And when I'm monitoring the application itself, not the various components. I'm making sure it's all there.
So the IPs of that will be associated to. So you created a two-tier thing. I noticed security groups in there as well. Are they in the same kind of subnet? How did that?
Yeah, so these two are at the moment. These two are in the same environment, but they're on a public IP as well. And we have, yes, you're right, we have got security groups, and we can do some firewall work at the application level. Okay. Also, it helps that these are running on Docker. It makes life a little bit easier. But what I'll quickly show you is what I can do is just to finish off, and this won't work because I haven't done one particular step I need to do, but it's a bit, but I can now deploy my app. So I can go in and go, right, yeah, there's the build of the app that I want to use, 1.3. There's the WAR file. This has all been pre-built for me in a template. It can come from a file, from a fetch, or from a Git repository. And then I can push this out, and it will deploy it onto that box for me and spin it up and make the application available. So now I've deployed that Spud marketing app into production. What I just do to finish off, the other things that people want to do is I can rescale that now. I can resize that box. I can come in and change the plan. If I realise that's too small for production, I could come in and say, actually, I need 8 gigs of RAM or whatever, and I can resize that. But more importantly, what you can do is you can scale out. So you can say, right, I want to add another cloud. Now, what we can do, another use of groups, is if your networking is set up, you can deploy into other clouds in the same group. So I can hit execute. What it will now do is it's actually deploying a second Tomcat server, but this one's on Amazon. Okay. Now, this is on a public IP address, so the Amazon box, as is the database, so the Amazon box will now be configured through Morpheus to talk. It would be told where the database server is on the public IP address.
Okay.
So now it will talk back to the box, and you can also do that through programmatical terms. So we can scale out using priorities, we can scale out using CPU, disk, memory as thresholds, and you can also do it on times as well.
you're not short of options in this solution. It's just
No.
very feature rich. I think is really the way to.
Yeah,
Okay,
it is.
fantastic.
So, and hence the demo, the way I do it is I think it shows off an awful lot of features, but in a meaningful way, rather than trying to talk through why would you have that, why would you be able to do that. So,
I don't know of that many kind of competitors in inverted commas that you might have. Are there any that you can think of that offer these
yeah.
kinds of? Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, so that's an interesting. So, yeah, so we have, as I mentioned, there's this term CMP, Cloud
Yeah.
Management Platform, and there's now what we're deeming CAMP.
Yeah.
I don't think there's many in our place. What you've got
No.
are the tools that are coming out of, don't like naming competitors, but there
No,
are
of
things like
course.
Clicker and Scalar, and as you mentioned, VMware's automation tools and things like that. They're almost by design complex and beefy tools, and they also tend to focus on one bit of the infrastructure. We've come at it from we need to be able to deploy applications into a multitude of different environments very quickly, very easy, in a very managed way. What are the things that we can do? And that's where I think we differ. We've come at it from a slightly different angle, very much in anger. Bertram Group had a requirement, and that's what they've fulfilled, and we use this ourselves as our tool for managing all of the companies that we acquire. So it's built and bred in production, but what the great thing is, it really does drop into that world of DevOps, and particularly in enterprise. You asked earlier about enterprise versus cloud provider. Cloud provider, brilliant. It's got all the self-servicing, it's got all the control, all the portal stuff. They can control it, they like it and love it and use it.
Your
enterprise use it.
It's the idea of IT as a service you were talking about earlier on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So
fantastic. Right, I am getting harassed now, so I'm going. Yeah, I'm about 10 minutes. So thank you very much. I really appreciate that, guys. It's been fantastic. It's absolutely something that I think that the customer I'm working with and probably a whole bunch of others as well could be used. I think you mentioned that you've been in touch with a few computer center guys over the last few months or so. So it's excellent stuff. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Good.
All right.
Thanks, Joe.
All the best. Take care.
All right, cheers, mate.
Cheers.
Bye. Bye.